So what happens when a secret is so heavy that it literally bends reality? Well, today we're diving into a story that sits right on the edge of what any of us think is possible. It's called the gravity of truth. Okay, get this quote. Some secrets don't explode. They bend reality and quietly crush the people who touch them. Man, that just sets a chilling tone, doesn't it? It's this idea that the most dangerous truths, they aren't the loud ones. No, they're the ones heavy enough to warp everything and everyone around them. And well, this is the story of a man who claims his life was quietly, completely crushed because he touched one of those secrets. All right, section 1, a man and a secret. This is all about going from the rules of physics to a place with none. You see, our story kicks off with a guy who lived by the rules of the universe, right up until he took a job that basically required him to forget everything he knew. And this is the man, Bob Lazar. Now, he wasn't some kind of hero or mystic, he was just a quiet physicist. His whole deal was that if you understand the rules of the universe, nothing is magic. It's just science. But that very core belief, it was about to be completely shattered by the exact same people who hired him. His first day on the job, it wasn't your typical 9-to-5 commute. Oh no. This was a deliberate act of disorientation. Imagine this. You're on a bus with blacked out windows heading deep into the Nevada desert to a place specifically designed to make you feel completely lost before you even step foot inside. And the very first thing he was told, it wasn't welcome aboard or glad to have you. Nope. It was a simple and honestly pretty ominous command. Forget how you got here. I mean, that was his first real warning, right? A sign that he was crossing a line he could never uncross. So where exactly did that bus take him? Well, it went deep inside a place called Hangar S4. And this, right here, is where the story goes from strange to something else entirely. Now, he wasn't at what you and I would call Area 51. That's kind of the public name, the name for outsiders. No, if you were on the inside, you knew this place by a different name, S4. And this facility, it wasn't just out in the middle of nowhere. It was hidden. I mean, literally carved right into the side of a mountain, perfectly camouflaged to look like nothing more than a scar on the earth. Wild. So when those massive hangar doors finally rolled open, Lazar saw something that his scientific brain it couldn't compute. It was this smooth metallic disc. But here's the thing. There were no seams, no rivets, not a single sign that it had ever been manufactured. It felt less like something that was built and more like something that had grown. And that's when he got his second warning. Basically, his job wasn't to ask about where it came from, the who or the why. His job was purely technical. Figure out the physics, just understand how it works. The whole mystery was on a strict need-to-know basis, and he didn't need to know. Okay, so how did it work? That's the big question, right? This next part, briefings and test flights, we're diving into the absolutely mind-bending physics Lazar says he was hired to reverse engineer. And we'll also get into the pretty shocking context he was given during these top-secret briefings. So the key to the whole thing was the power source. Apparently, it was an element that, back in the 1980s, just didn't exist, according to public science. They called it element 115. It was supposed to be completely impossible, but right there, inside this craft's reactor, it was the fuel. So think about how our rockets work, right? They push, they create a massive explosion to shove themselves forward through space. Well, this thing, it did the exact opposite. Its reactor generated a gravity field so incredibly intense that it didn't push through space, it pulled space towards it. It was literally pulling its destination closer by warping space-time itself. Which meant they weren't trying to build faster vehicles to break the speed of light. No, they were learning how to sidestep that rule entirely. As Lazar put it, they were learning how to fall in the right direction. The craft wasn't moving through space, space itself was moving around the craft. It was basically cheating universe. But believe it or not, the technology was only half the story. Lazar had to attend these weekly briefings, and get this, no questions allowed. And in these briefings, he was told a completely different history of the world. A version where humanity was never really alone, but was being observed and even subtly guided by beings they only referred to as the others. And this is the thought that finally pushed Lazar to act. When the impossible becomes predictable, it stops being imagination and starts being evidence. See, he noticed the test flights were predictable. They happened every single Wednesday night, like clockwork. So what did he do? He brought his friends out to the edge of the desert to see it for themselves. For him, in that moment, the impossible became a repeatable experiment. And that made it evident. Yeah, well, that decision to bring witnesses, it had immediate and pretty severe consequences. This next part is about the price he paid for knowing and for sharing what he knew. The punishment wasn't some dramatic movie-style confrontation. It was much colder. A quiet, systematic dismantling of his entire life. On Wednesday night, his friends see the test flight. By Thursday, his security clearance is just gone, revoked. By Friday, his keycard doesn't work. And then, the next week, the really sinister part. His university and employment records, they vanished. Poof. As he said, they didn't threaten my life. They erased my proof that it ever mattered. Think about that. The threat wasn't physical. It was existential. They made it so that, on paper, the physicist who worked at S4 simply never existed. And that brings us to the aftermath, the unsettled truth. You see, Lazar eventually went public. He claimed it wasn't for fame, but for protection, an insurance policy, basically. And for decades since, his story has just been hovering, unresolved. Now, for a long, long time, Lazar's story was pretty much dismissed by everyone. But as the years passed, some strange things started to happen. Little cracks started to appear in the official story of denial. For example, military pilots started coming forward, reporting these craft that made impossible moves, just like the acceleration Lazar described. Then the government itself started admitting, yeah, we're investigating UAPs. And maybe the wildest part? Decades later, scientists officially synthesized element 115. They made it, and it was added to the periodic table. It's incredibly unstable, sure, but it's real. And so, this is where we're left. The debate just keeps going. On one side, you've got people saying he's a total fraud, who made up an incredible story. And on the other, people who believe he's a whistleblower, someone who told a truth so big, the only way to fight it was to try and erase the man who told it. But really, Lazar's story forces us to grapple with a much bigger question. I mean, if we are not alone, if the core of what he says is true, then the real question isn't just what do we know, it's who gets to decide when we're allowed to know. And maybe that's the perfect place to leave it. The final idea is that the truth, it doesn't fly, it hovers. According to this story, it's not some fast-moving target we have to chase down. It's already here, silent, patient, just waiting for us to find the courage to look up.